My daughter had been dead for 18 months. So when the clerk at the Lamar Avenue post office handed me a package with her name on the label, her full name, in her handwriting, shipped 6 days ago from Tucson, Arizona, my first thought wasn't that there had been a mistake. My first thought was that I was losing my mind. I stood in that parking lot and read the label 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, the way you keep flicking a light switch back and forth even though you know you just turned it off, hoping that this time the result will be different. It wasn't. The handwriting was Claire's, those small, slightly left-leaning letters, exactly like the ones on birthday cards, grocery lists, and the little notes she used to stick to my refrigerator whenever she visited. I knew that handwriting the way I know my own face in a mirror. A person who has been in the ground for 18 months cannot send packages. But this was my daughter's handwriting, and I didn't know which was more terrifying, if that was the truth. My name is Walter Briggs. I was a licensed electrician for 39 years, commercial and residential work, mostly in the Shelby County area. Hospitals, churches, shopping plazas, and probably 400 houses across the Memphis metro before I hung it up. My hands still carry the evidence. There's a groove on my left ring finger from 15 years of wearing a wire gauge. My right thumb has a burn scar from a panel job I rushed in 1999 that I've never stopped reminding myself about. I know what a working circuit is supposed to look like, and I know from a long career of hard lessons what it looks like when something underneath the surface is drawing power it has no right to draw. A hidden fault. Something wrong you can't see yet, but you can feel. I should have felt it sooner. That's the thing I keep coming back to. My wife Dorothy passed 8 years ago. Ovarian cancer, diagnosed in February, gone by September. She was 61, still singing in the church choir the month they founded. She never made it to 62. After the funeral, I sat in our front room for 4 days straight, watching her rocking chair the way you watch a door you're expecting someone to walk through. We had one daughter together, Claire. She was the kind of child who makes you feel like you did something right in a previous life. Stubborn as a mule. Funny in a way that could stop a room cold. The laugh was the thing, big, unguarded, the kind that filled a whole house. She became a nurse, then a charge nurse. She married Derek Colston when she was 29. He worked in wealth management. Tailored shirts, firm handshake, the kind of man who seemed to know exactly where every room was going before he walked into it. I liked him well enough. Dorothy adored him. Claire was devoted to him. They had twin girls, Nora and Lily, born on a wet Thursday in April, 6 pounds 4 ounces each, both of them screaming like they had somewhere important to be. Those little girls were the reason I got out of bed after Dorothy died. Every Saturday without exception, I drove 45 minutes to their house in Germantown, brought juice boxes and coloring books, sat on the carpet, and let the girls climb on me like I was playground equipment. Nora was quiet and intense, the kind of child who could sit for an hour with a sketchbook drawing animals she'd seen in library books. Lily was pure chaos in a dress, fearless, loud, the funniest 4-year-old I ever met. They were the best thing I had left. Then Claire died, 18 months ago. A Sunday morning, early, on I-40 near Jackson. Derek called me at 6:45. His voice was flat in a way I didn't register as wrong until much later. "Walter, there's been an accident." Claire had been driving back from an overnight hospital shift. Wet road, poor visibility. Her car left the roadway on the overpass. She didn't survive. I don't remember what I said to him. I remember the floor coming up to meet my knees. I remember looking up at Dorothy's rocking chair from down there on the tile, thinking, well, I'll be with you both sooner than I thought. The funeral was closed casket. Derek said the accident had been severe. I never saw my daughter's face again. I pressed my palm against that smooth wooden lid and said goodbye to the girl who used to fall asleep on my shoulder watching football games she didn't care about, just to stay close to me. 6 weeks after the funeral, Derek came to sit in my living room with red eyes and folded hands. Claire had carried nursing school debt, $44,000, still outstanding. Between the loan payments, the mortgage, and raising twin 5-year-olds on a single income, he was going under. He asked if I could help. $1,100 a month, he said. Just for 2 or 3 years. I can manage after that. What was I going to say? My grandchildren needed stability. Claire would have wanted me to step up. So I did. I set up the automatic transfer, picked up side jobs rewiring old houses for cash to cover the shortfall. 18 months. $19,800. Gone. Here's what I should tell you now. Something changed in Derek around month 3 or 4. The invitations stopped. Saturday visits got shorter, tighter, more controlled. By the second year, he was pushing Nora and Lily out onto the porch and saying he had calls to take, then disappearing inside before I'd finished saying hello. I told myself grief does strange things to people. He'd lost his wife. He was raising twins alone. I had that feeling, the same one I get when I'm testing a circuit and the readings don't match what they should. Everything looks finished on the surface. But something underneath is drawing current it has no right to draw. A hidden fault waiting to blow. I ignored it. For 18 months, I ignored it. Until the Tuesday at Lamar Avenue, when Brenda, behind the counter, 20-year veteran of that post office, knows my name, knows my truck, waved me over and said, "Mr. Walter, we got a package that went into your box wrong. Delivery address is way across town." She handed it over with an apologetic smile. I looked at the label. The delivery address was 4419 Whitmore Drive, Derek's house. But the sender name was Claire Renee Briggs Colston, her full legal name. The name on her nursing license, her hospital badge, every official document she ever signed. Shipped from Tucson, Arizona, 6 days ago. I read it 4 times. I walked to my truck. I sat there, and the world went very small and very quiet. Honestly, if I'm being real with you, part of me already knew something. Not the fact I couldn't have named the fact. But that hidden fault I'd been ignoring for 18 months stopped being quiet. I want to tell you I immediately sprang into action. I didn't. I sat in that parking lot for 22 minutes, unable to make myself start the engine. There are 2 kinds of fear. The fear that something terrible has happened, and the fear that the terrible thing you've been living with turns out to be something entirely different and the rearrangement might break you. I was afraid of both. I called my brother Earl. He's 69. Retired homicide detective, Memphis PD, 30 years on the job, the last 12 as a senior detective. Sharp as a straight razor and twice as stubborn. He answered before the second ring. "Walter." His voice had that tone he only uses when he already knows something's wrong. "Come to the house," I said. "Right now. I need your eyes on something." He was there in 20 minutes. I put the package on his kitchen table without saying a word. Watched him read the label. Watched him take his glasses off, clean them, put them back on, and read it again. "That's Claire's handwriting on the return address." It wasn't a question. "I know," I said. He put the package down with both hands, gently, the way a detective handles something that matters. Then he pulled out the small notebook he's carried since 1987 and uncapped his pen. "Okay," he said, "let's work this." Inside the package, wrapped in a piece of flannel cloth, was a small cedar box, about the size of a hardback novel. I had to sit down when I saw it. I carved that box myself, in my garage workshop, for Claire's 15th birthday. She'd kept it on her dresser her entire life, through her first apartment, through the Germantown house. I'd seen it on her nightstand 100 times. It was here now. In Memphis. Shipped from Tucson, Arizona. Inside the cedar box was a folded note. My hands were shaking when I opened it. The handwriting was Claire's small, slightly left-leaning, the A's closed tight the way she'd always written them since middle school. 4 words. 4 words that undid 18 months of grief in a single breath. "Daddy, please come find me." I don't know how long I sat there. Earl was quiet. The room was still. And then something that hadn't happened to me in 18 months took hold. I stopped grieving. The grief didn't disappear. It converted into something else entirely. I looked at that note, and I felt a slow, structural rage move through me from the base of my spine upward. The kind of rage that doesn't flash and burn out. The kind that settles in and waits. If you have ever believed you lost someone, and then discovered the loss was manufactured, deliberately engineered by a person you trusted, you know what that conversion feels like. It isn't relief. Not yet. It's something closer to detonation. I need you to understand that, because it matters for everything that comes after. Earl went to work. He called a former colleague in the Shelby County Fraud Unit, pulled financial records, traced a P.O. box registration in Tucson. The box had been registered 11 weeks earlier under the initials C.R.B. Claire Renee Briggs. Meanwhile, I drove to Derek's house that Saturday like nothing had happened. Same time, same route. Derek answered the door in a pressed shirt with a coffee in his hand, smile in place like a reflex. Said the girls were finishing lunch. Come back in 10 minutes. I waited on the porch. Through the front window I could see a woman in the kitchen, tall, dark ponytail, maybe mid-30s. She was leaning over the table, laughing at something Lily said, touching her shoulder the way someone does when they live there. When I asked Derek who she was, his answer came one beat too fast. Sandra. She helps out with the girls after school. She's been great with them. They love her. I nodded and said nothing, but I memorized her face. That evening, Earl called. The news came in pieces, each one worse than the last. My $1,100 every month went into Derek's checking account and transferred within 48 hours to a savings account registered under Sandra Pruitt's name. The account held $61,000. Derek had also collected Claire's life insurance, $180,000, paid out 9 months after the death certificate was filed. $42,000 in employer death benefit on top of that. The life insurance sat in a brokerage account. The death benefit, combined with my contributions, sat in Sandra Pruitt's savings. The death certificate had been signed by a doctor, Emmett Voss, a physician whose Tennessee medical license had been revoked 2 years earlier for producing fraudulent documents in immigration cases. Earl had already put in a call to a contact in Tucson. I want to pause here, because right at this point, someone always asks the same question. Why didn't she just leave? And I need you to sit with that before I answer. Because the answer is more complicated than any 3 words can hold. Claire didn't leave because leaving had been made structurally impossible. Derek had spent years ensuring that. It started with small things, managing their finances, making social decisions for both of them, asking pointed questions when she came home 10 minutes late from a shift. After the twins were born, it became something else. Her phone was tracked. Her mileage was checked against her schedule. She tried to leave once. And Derek told her, calmly and in full sentences, that he had the lawyers and the income and the social standing, and that no court in Shelby County would give custody to an unstable nurse with student debt over a wealth manager with a clean record and a 6-figure income. He wasn't threatening. That's what made it terrifying, he was explaining. So she disappeared instead, because disappearing, with his cooperation and a disgraced doctor's paperwork, was the only exit he'd left her. 10 days after the package arrived, Earl and I flew to Tucson. I told Derek I was visiting a cousin in Huntsville. He didn't ask for details. He never asked about my life. That alone should have told me something. Tucson in October is pale and dry, the mountains sitting at the edge of the sky like something from a painting. We rented a car and drove to the post office. Earl sweet-talked the manager with his retired detective credentials and got the box rental signature. It matched Claire's handwriting exactly. We set up a watch the next morning at 9 a.m. Noon passed. Nothing. At 1:47 in the afternoon, a woman walked through the post office door in a gray jacket with the hood pulled low. Thin. Much thinner than I remembered. She walked straight to the box row, opened 1138 with a key, pulled out a stack of mail, and turned around. My legs stopped working. Earl caught my elbow before I went down, because it was Claire, 18 months older, 30 pounds lighter, her hair cut short and dyed a color that wasn't hers. But her face, Dorothy's cheekbones, her own stubborn jaw. I would have known that face if I'd been blind for 20 years and given back 1 second of sight. She walked out without seeing us. She's alive, I said. My voice came out strange and thin, like it was coming from far away. Earl put his hand on my shoulder and didn't say anything. He knew there was nothing to say. That evening I went alone. Earl argued for 5 minutes and then looked at my face and stopped arguing. Some things are between a father and a child, and there's no protocol that overrides that. I climbed 3 flights of stairs on a hip that's been complaining since I turned 60. My heart was going so hard I could feel it behind my back teeth. I stood outside Unit 3C for a long time, long enough that a neighbor opened her door, looked at me, and went back inside. I thought about $19,000 sent to a man who spent it on the woman inside this building. I thought about pressing my hand against a closed casket and saying goodbye. I thought about Nora's sketchbook, Lily's laugh. I thought about Dorothy's rocking chair. I knocked. Footsteps. A pause. The chain sliding. The door opened 3 inches and Claire's face appeared in the gap. When she saw me, her hand flew to her mouth. Her eyes went wide and immediately full of tears. She said one word. Daddy. I said, "Hey, baby girl." My voice broke in half on the second word. She got the chain off and she hit me like a wave. Her arms were around my neck, and she was shaking and saying, "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry," and I held her so hard I was probably hurting her, and I didn't care even a little. I could feel her heart beating against my chest, fast and terrified and real. She was real, she was breathing, she was alive in my arms. That was the only thing I knew for a full minute, and for a full minute it was enough. We sat on her futon. The apartment was spare and careful, no photographs on the walls, no decorations, nothing that couldn't be packed in 20 minutes. The apartment of someone who never stopped being ready to run. She couldn't look at me for a while after the tears slowed down. When she started talking, it came out in pieces, like someone pulling nails from old wood. She told me about the years of control I hadn't seen, the tracking app, the mileage checks, the 1-hour interrogation if she came home 20 minutes late from a hospital shift. She told me about the time Derek took her car keys and left her home for a day and a half so she would, as he put it, think about her behavior. She told me about the push into the door frame that he called a stumble, said calmly, in front of the girls. So there was no scene, no proof, nothing but the bruise she hid with her scrub sleeve. She told me she'd tried to leave once, just once. And she told me what he said to her afterward, precisely and without raising his voice, about the lawyers and the courts and the income disparity and the nursing debt, and why she would not win. She believed him. She'd had years of reasons to believe him. Then she told me about Dr. Voss, a physician Derek had found through a former client, disgraced, desperate for income, willing to produce a death certificate and a fabricated accident report for $15,000 cash. Derek framed it to her as the only clean exit. She would disappear, start over somewhere. The girls would stay with him. If she refused, he would take them through the courts and she would never see them again. He told her this quietly, at the kitchen table, over coffee. She didn't have anything to fight back with. She took the exit. "Why didn't you find a way to call me?" I said. I kept my voice level, but it cost me something. I would have come. I would have done anything. She looked at me the way Dorothy looked at me in her last weeks, the face of someone who has been carrying a weight they stopped believing anyone else could lift. "He monitored everything," she said. "My phone, my email, the mail at the house. It took me 4 months of saving change from grocery receipts to rent the P.O. box. I registered it under my initials so he wouldn't recognize the name. The cedar box was the only thing I took when I left, the only piece of home I had. I wrapped it in a piece of my scrub top and mailed it to his address because I knew packages went to a post office box before delivery. I was hoping it would end up in the wrong hands. Your hands." I held her for a long time after that. The Tucson evening came through the curtains in thin strips of orange light. I held my daughter who I had mourned and buried, and I made her a promise. I told her that her Uncle Earl was in this city right now with 30 years of police experience and a notebook full of evidence. I told her that by the time we were done, Derek Colston was going to answer for every single thing he had done. She looked at me like someone who'd stopped allowing themselves to believe anything. "How?" she asked. I squeezed her hands. "We've already built half the case," I told her. "We just needed you." We flew back to Memphis with Claire. She stayed at Earl's house, hidden. The following week moved fast. Earl reached out to Detective Marguerite Hines at the Shelby County DA's office, Domestic Violence and Financial Exploitation Unit. We laid out everything. Dr. Voss's revoked license, the fabricated accident report, the insurance payout, the Sandra Pruitt account, my transferred funds, Claire's testimony. Detective Hines reviewed the documents with the stillness of someone trying hard not to show how angry they are. "This is textbook coercive control layered over financial fraud," she said. "We can have warrants drafted by Friday." But Earl had kept digging. Sandra Pruitt, he found, was no recent hire. Phone records obtained through Hines's warrant showed she and Derek had been in regular contact for over 14 months, well before Claire's supposed death. Her private social media was full of vacation photos and dinner photos and weekend trips. In many of them, Nora and Lily were present, calling Sandra by her first name, sitting in her lap, and in a joint brokerage account under Derek and Sandra's combined names. $130,000 in managed investments, grown from the life insurance payout. Then Earl found the flight records. Memphis to San Jose, Costa Rica. 2 adult tickets and 2 children's tickets. Departure date, November 9th. 11 days away. "He's taking the girls," Earl said over the phone, in the flat, contained voice he uses when something is very serious. Once they're in Costa Rica with the documentation Derek could buy from the same network as Voss, getting those children back would be a legal nightmare that takes years. I thought about Nora's sketchbook, Lily running barefoot. I thought about Dorothy, who died believing her son-in-law was a good man. I thought about what it would mean to lose those girls to an ocean and a lie. I did not sleep that night. Friday morning, 7:15, Detective Hines and 2 officers arrived at 4419 Whitmore Drive in Germantown. Earl and I were parked across the street in his truck. Claire was at Earl's house with a family services advocate. "Go bring my girls home," she'd said when I called her at 6 a.m. "I'll be here." Derek answered the door in a polo shirt with a coffee in his hand. His smile was in place like a reflex. When he saw the badges, the smile broke at the corners. Just slightly. He was very good at containing himself. Detective Hines identified herself, named the charges insurance fraud, identity fraud, filing false death certificates, financial exploitation of a dependent adult, in a tone so flat and precise that each charge landed like its own thing. Derek's coffee hit the porch tile. His eyes moved past Hines to the street. They found mine. For just a moment, I saw something in his face that wasn't calculation or composure. It was smaller and colder than that. Recognition. He'd always known this was possible. He'd been running the odds the entire time. "Walter," he called out. "Walter, you don't understand the full situation." I got out of Earl's truck. I walked across that lawn slowly. My hip ached. The morning air smelled like cut grass and coffee and the particular shame of a man who's been found out. I stood at the foot of his porch steps and I looked up at him and I said calmly, "You let me grieve my daughter for 18 months. You sat in my living room and looked me in the eye and took my money and told me it was for my granddaughters. You had this woman in your house the whole time spending the money I sent. You had those children calling her by a name that isn't their mother's name. Tell me what part of that I'm misunderstanding." He opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked away. That was the only moment I felt anything close to pity for him. Not for what he'd done, for what he'd become. A man who could only look away. Sandra appeared behind him in the hallway, confused, pale. Detective Hines turned to her and informed her she was under arrest for conspiracy and accessory charges. Sandra started crying immediately. She said she didn't know. She said Derek had told her Claire left voluntarily. Hines told her the savings account told a different story. The handcuffs clicked twice. 2 separate sets. Derek was led to the patrol car without another word. Sandra wept all the way down the porch steps. And then Nora appeared at the top of the staircase inside, holding a stuffed elephant, looking down at me with her mother's eyes. "Grandpa," she said. Her voice was small. "Come here, sweetheart," I said. "Come right now." She came down the stairs and I caught her at the bottom. Lily came right behind her, barefoot, hair everywhere, scanning the porch for explanation. I knelt down on that porch with both my granddaughters and I held them, and they made little protest sounds about being squeezed too hard, and I held tighter anyway. The patrol car doors closed on the street behind me. I heard them, and I held tighter still. "Where are they taking Daddy?" Lily asked. I looked at both of them. Nora's serious face with her grandmother's wide-set eyes. Lily's stubborn chin that was exactly her mother's. "Your daddy made some choices that hurt people," I said carefully. "But you are safe. And there is somebody who has been waiting for you for a very long time. Somebody who loves you more than anything in this world." I drove them to Earl's house. Claire was standing on the front porch. She'd been pacing since before I called, watching the end of the street from my truck. When I pulled up and the girls saw her through the windshield, the back seat went completely silent. Then Nora said "Mommy" in a voice so small and certain that I had to look away from the windshield. I stopped the truck. The girls were out of the back seat before I had the engine off. Claire dropped to her knees on the front walk and they hit her, all 3 of them, in a tangle of arms and voices, and "I missed you. I love you. Where were you? You're here. You're here. You're here." I could hear it from inside the truck with the windows up. I sat there and felt something unlock in my chest that had been locked for 18 months. I let myself feel it, all of it. Earl came around and knocked on my window. I rolled it down. "You good?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "I'm good." 5 months later, Derek Colston was convicted on all counts: insurance fraud, identity fraud, filing false death certificates, coercive control, financial exploitation of a dependent adult. 11 years in federal prison. Full restitution. Parental rights terminated pending Claire's custody petition, which was granted 3 months after the verdict. Sandra Pruitt pleaded guilty to conspiracy and accessory charges, received 3.5 years, and was ordered to return all funds. Dr. Emmett Voss, who had cooperated with the DA's office, received 5 years for multiple counts of document forgery. When the judge read Derek's sentence, he stared at the wall and said nothing. He didn't look at me, didn't look at Claire, didn't look at the girls seated in the second row. The man who had smiled his way through 18 months of lies sat perfectly still with nothing left to say. That was enough. That was exactly enough. The restitution order returned $254,000 in total. Claire used part of it to rent a house 10 minutes from mine in Cordova, 3 bedrooms, big backyard, a covered porch. I used my portion, $19,800, to open education accounts for Nora and Lily. I reopened the workshop in my garage, which I hadn't touched in almost 2 years. The first Saturday after the verdict, the girls came over and I put safety glasses on them and let them watch me sand a piece of oak. Nora asked 27 questions. I counted. Lily tried to pick up the belt sander. I let her hold it with my hand over hers while it was off. She looked up at me with those wide eyes and said, "Grandpa, I'm going to build something." "Yeah," I said. "You are." We drive to the cemetery every few weeks, all 4 of us, and stand at Dorothy's grave under the water oaks. Claire brings white carnations, Dorothy's favorite, and lays them on the stone. Last time, Lily tugged my sleeve and asked if Grandma Dorothy knew what happened. I looked down at her. "I think she knew the whole time," I said. "I think she was watching the whole time." Lily thought about this very seriously for a moment, and then nodded, like that settled something. That evening, I sat on my front porch alone while the girls argued inside about something I couldn't make out. Memphis settled into the warm dark around me, the smell of the river somewhere underneath everything. I thought about the parking lot. 22 minutes. The package in my left hand. I thought about the cedar box I built in my garage 29 years ago for a 15-year-old girl who kept it on her dresser her whole life. I thought about 4 words in left-leaning handwriting. "Daddy, please come find me." I almost missed it. The package was addressed to Derek's house. If Brenda at the Lamar Avenue post office hadn't waved me over if it had gone into the right mail slot, I'd have never known. Claire might still be in that bare apartment in Tucson. Nora and Lily might be in Costa Rica right now, calling someone else mom, growing up inside a lie. A sorting error at a post office. A clerk who knew my face. A cedar box I built with my own hands. That's the entire distance between the truth and losing everything. So here is what I need to say plainly before I let you go. Pay attention to the feeling that something is wrong, even when you can't name it. I had that feeling for 18 months, and I explained it away because grief makes you afraid of your own instincts. It makes you feel like the ache in your gut is just part of the mourning. Don't do what I did. Ask the hard questions. Look at the wall that doesn't sit right, even when it's easier to hang a picture over it and move on. Truth doesn't disappear. It waits. It sends a package to the wrong address and prays someone is paying attention. There is a difference between loving someone and going to find them. I thought loving Claire meant grieving her. It turned out loving her meant boarding a flight to Tucson. Those are 2 different things, and the difference is everything. Love that only shows up in the dark and doesn't move isn't enough. The people who matter to you need you to move. And this I cannot say loudly enough. If you are in a situation where someone monitors your phone, your movements, your money, your access to the people who love you, and tells you that what they're doing is keeping you safe, or keeping things smooth, or just managing things that is not love, that is a cage with a smile painted on the bars. There is help. There are people who will believe you. There is an exit that doesn't require you to vanish. Claire sent that cedar box from a post office in Tucson, addressed to a house she had every reason to believe was being watched, using her full name on the return label. She was terrified. She did it anyway. That is the bravest thing I have witnessed in 64 years of living, and it saved her life. Before I let you go, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is where you are. I genuinely want to know who's out there. And tell me this. Comment 1 if you think I should have pushed harder and asked more questions long before that package arrived. Comment 2 if you think I handled it the right way once the truth came out. Comment 3 if you've ever had a feeling in your gut about someone close to you that you talked yourself out of and wish you hadn't. I read every single comment. Every one. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't subscribed yet, it would mean a great deal to have you here. I come back every week with another story about truth and family, and the quiet, stubborn work of holding on to both. This is a fictional story inspired by real emotional experiences, fully rewritten and reimagined in Memphis, Tennessee, to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is entirely coincidental.